That's all. Thank you.
Okay, so hi everyone. Welcome to this week's satsang discussion. Today we'll be focusing on why we as Hindus should learn Sanskrit. And as always, just a reminder, during the open discussion portions of the presentation, please remember to be civil, respectful, and on topic when expressing your thoughts and opinions. And so our speaker today is Harshit Mishra, and Harshit hails from a small town in central Bharat named Sagar. He was born and brought up in the holy city of Prayagraj. He graduated as a civil engineer from NITK in Mangalore and is pursuing his PhD in environmental fluid mechanics from Colorado State University. So he's worked as a lecturer in Uttarakhand Technical University in the Department of Civil Engineering. He's learned Sanskrit through tradition and has been a volunteer for Samskrita Bharti USA since August 2019. He's a member of Yuvagana that specifically focuses on taking Sanskrit to the youth. And he also holds a diploma in Russian and is currently pursuing an advanced diploma in Samskritam from Tirupati Vidyapitam. So, Harshit, take it away.
Yeah. Am I audible? Thank you, Ambika. Namaste. I would request the permission to share my screen, please. Yeah. Can I do that now?
Yeah, Mahodaya, I think you have the...
Okay, thank you. So, namaste everyone. Today we'll start our discussion on why should we learn Samskritam, and like Ambika has introduced me, I'm currently a PhD student in civil engineering, but Samskritam is something that binds us together, and we've been doing so many activities as Hindus in the United States, as well as way back in India. And I'm very glad that today Hindu Student Council has given me this opportunity to share some of my understanding with regard to Sanskrit language and its impact on Hinduism, right? So we'll begin with a quick discussion. I'll just start the presentation that I had prepared. And just a second, I must be able to share my screen. So I'll do that right away. Yeah, so, okay. So is my presentation visible?
Yes, it is.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, we can see it.
Thank you. So we'll start with an invocation to Goddess Saraswati, and I have put this very important picture of Sharda Peetham in Kashmir, which is the highest seat of learning as per Hindu tradition. And unfortunately, today we don't have the access to this Peetham, and hopefully in the coming times we get the access, and that's why I remember the goddess of learning, and I pray to her. Namaste Sharade Devi Kashmir Purvasani Tvamaham Prarthaye Nityam Vidyadanancha Dehi Me Hindu Nam Nah Purah Peetham Yavat Khalana Vimuchyate Tavat Vagadevi Tvam Bhaktanam Shauryam Api Vardhatam. So this these two shlokas basically convey that the goddess of learning, we pray to you so that you bless us with knowledge, and you give us the strength to gather. You give us the strength to go back and get this Peetham back to its glory, and so that we can pray you once again, right? So with this little invocation, I move forward to these three questions, right? And this is open for discussion to all of you, and then I'll present my case as stated before. So my first question is, what is your perception of the functionality of Sanskrit, or why haven't you been able to learn it yet? So that's an open question. If you all want to discuss and put forward your point, like, what do you perceive about Samskritam? Where does it stand in the current context or anywhere?
Um, so namaste, my name is Anaga, and so I've actually been a student of Samskrita Bharti for the past few years. So I
Yes.
have been learning Samskritam. So like what really inspired me and my family to like start learning Samskritam is like I guess that like I guess lack of like unity and lack of like understanding of what we really do. So like when we come to the US, like we have people coming from all over India. So things like mother tongues don't match and things like that. So whatever we converse in is we mostly converse in English. And so like my parents are always like trying to get us out of this habit of speaking in English and like try to speak our matrabhashas and all of that. And also like that is one of the reasons that we started learning Samskritam is to be able to communicate better with like all Hindus. But also another aspect is like most Hindus want to know like what do our scriptures say? What is actually there in the Vedas? Like we know that it's like one of the authoritative texts, but like what is actually in it? And so the ability to be able to like decipher what is in those texts and understand all of that is very important, and it's an important part of like passing on dharma to the next generations. So my parents and I thought it was really important to get involved with Samskrita Bharati and start learning Sanskritam.
Excellent. So this comes out very clearly that you have thought of this as a bridging medium, something that cuts across the regions and transcends the barrier of Matrabhasha, and that's fundamentally what it is. And we are going to discuss about this in my presentation. Thank you for bringing this up as a
So
tool that forges the unity. Anyone who is willing to put their thoughts forward.
yeah, I have my thoughts.
Yeah.
So it's keeping the first and second questions. So from based on my experience, I may be wrong, but Sanskrit actually a dying language, and like especially in India and or everywhere for that matter. Like it's a dying language and used in like minimally for like holy purposes, and that's the reason why it most people don't learn it, and well, most people haven't learned it, and so that's why it is dying, because we don't because as she said earlier that because it hasn't been passed down from generation to generation, like knowledge of the scriptures and the knowledge of Sanskrit. So uh, yeah.
Okay, I'll take your word here. I'll give you the contrary proof that Sanskrit is not a dying language, but it is probably spoken by more people than many of the living languages of the world. So it's not just Samskrita Bharti that helps in rejuvenating the language, but it's also about the knowledge tradition of India. And until like 19th century, we did have people from all across the country writing in those texts, and it was fairly a living language. And I'll tell you why it's so, but we'll bring in more perspectives if people have it.
Yeah, I was going to just say, like how Anaga mentioned with the Vedas, learning about what they say. Well, we in our family, in our cultural practices, that has never been a curiosity, or it has never been passed down from our ancestors. Like the need to read the Vedas. There's never been that sort of curiosity, and I feel like we've kind of had this distance from it. Obviously, I have now started becoming more interested, but it was never something that was taught to me from my family experiences. So I think that does play a major role in today's world. Like our parents don't really teach us to learn the Vedas, and even my grandparents don't do that, and I think it has a lot to do with um, the like the necessity, because I'm not sure if this is really true, like if it has something to do with the functionality, how mentioned earlier, the priests, they tend to learn about these Sanskrit, and it seems to be more relevant to them than to other people who do not tend to learn shlokas. So I think it has a lot to do with their family experiences as well.
Okay. Okay. So that's a fairly nice point. But what I can see is that there is a consistent emphasis on the theological aspect of using Sanskrit as a Dev Bhasha for studying our uh, for conducting our rituals, for doing pujanams and all those things, right? Anushtanams and everything. So yeah, that is definitely there, and that's one of the prime objectives of this bhasha. But today's presentation is not going to be about that. And if I may move to the other question, like what is the place of Samskritam in Hinduism? Can anyone say this? I mean, you all have told about this, that Vedas are in Samskritam, all the other texts that we know, the priests converse in Sanskritam, they take their they do their daily routine in Samskritam, and all those anushtans are done in Samskritam. But apart from that, do you think that anywhere else Hinduism, and one more point that was raised was that it unifies people from different parts of the country. Um, so is there any other point that you want to bring in to show how Samskritam and Hinduism are like inseparably connected? Yeah.
Yes, I would, and thank you, Mishraji, for doing this talk.
Yeah.
One point that I would bring up is that Sanskrit is not only a Deva Bhasha, and it not only encapsulates our tradition's most sacred and important texts, but it actually is a religious and spiritual language in and of itself. The effect of speaking Sanskrit has a spiritually uplifting effect upon a person, and the power of Sanskrit mantras is such that they cannot be understood in translation. The language is highly inflected. It's a very advanced language, and studying it has an effect on the mind and on one's spiritual state of mind that is irreproducible in any other language.
Absolutely, I totally agree. That actually, I my perspective of looking at that is that Samskrita is actually a Dev Bhasha. That's why it's so powerful in its attributes, right? So, Nesargi, am I good to continue with the presentation, or let's take it forward and we'll come back to the discussion if that is all right.
Yeah, that sounds good, Mohoday.
Yeah. All right. So thank you everyone for wonderful perspectives on how you perceive Samskritam. And let me go forward and talk to you about this, the structure of this discussion, right? And I'm going to take up like 8 critical points. And the first part of this particular presentation actually deals with the salient features of Samskrita Bhasha, which have not been discussed on any platform as such, because we don't see any language from that perspective, right? Something that could be very systematic, very methodical, and can use fundamentals of speech biology into developing different words, different derivations, different speech structures, right? All of that is like, it is so intricately linked together that we would recognize in a moment that is very critical to that language. Then the language is highly codified. So for you to learn those codes, you would recognize, often you would hear people saying that, oh, Sanskrit can be programmed. It's a wonderful language that can be programmed on a computer. And there are a lot of rumors about different agencies using Sanskritam for their advanced technologies. I don't disagree or agree. I don't want to get into the discussion, but the kind of codification that we see in Sanskrit Bhasha, I would like to present it to you to recognize that long sentences or huge information can be represented in symbols that are very short and tiny, right? Then I want to go to very important part sophisticated poetics, right? And that poetics is just not about poetry. It's about music. It's about the analysis of a human mind and how a human mind perceives different influences from the society, from their interactions, what kind of uh, sounds generate a particular emotion, what kind of music generates a particular emotion. All that is embedded in the poetics. And the fourth part is going to be the embedded etymological approach, right? So it's like, for example, when you were studying geometry in your middle school, right? Or probably in your high school, you were pretty comfortable in deriving certain sets of results, right? Uh, and in Samskritam, every word can be derived from the scratch, like taking it from a dhatu, deriving it, and giving them different meanings. So you can actually go back and find out what is the root of this word, which is a part of modern linguistics, right? Modern linguistic, the people who work in modern linguistics, what do? They are busy finding out from where did this particular word originate. But Sanskrit is basically embedded. When you study Samskritam, you basically know about those things. And then I go to the latter part, that is like, what is the reward of, I call it a seva. When you learn Samskritam, I see it as a seva because you put in your effort, you put in your labor by learning it. So you identify people with highest morals, values that are inherent to Hinduism, right? So we see a lot of Hindu phobia in the world, targeting especially those aspects of Hinduism which are very sacred to us. For example, cow worship, and it is something that is used as a very prominent jibe in most of the Hindu phobic discourses, right? So I would tell you that how, to what extent these values matter to our kings and people all around, right? And then recognizing the frivolity of fault lines. So India is a country that has been affected by a racial discourse that was imposed on us. So how do we tackle that using Samskritam? And the last part is combating the vilification of Hindus. So just a summary of what we are going to discuss today, and I have a lot of material to cover, so I'll move in quickly. Uh, and just as a warning, the first 10 minutes are going to be slightly technical. So I prefer this strategy to be a little technical in the beginning and then ease out by the end, right? So just bear with me. It's going to be interesting. If you have a scientific temperament, it should be all easily acceptable. So don't worry about that. I was told that it's slightly complicated, but I still like to take that route to tell you about those things. Okay. All right. So the first part is Samskritam letters and speech biology. And just to clarify, I come from a background of like Indian education, which is mostly British. So somewhere I use terms which are British style of like communication. So syllables and letters, you can like see them like interchangeably, right? So I just set this out at the beginning. So now in Samskritam, compare this with English language, right? That is your benchmark. Now in Samskritam, the letters are basically organized based on the place or the effort of pronunciation. I'll tell you in a moment what is a place and or the effort of pronunciation. Sandhi means basically conjugation, right? So sandhi is helpful in introducing transitions by changing the bridge letter, or it introduces certain new letters so that your pronunciation is compatible with your speech biology. And this is an introduction slide. We'll explain this further in a moment. Now, if, for example, you have to, you are perhaps in a play, right? If you are participating in a play, and God forbid, one of your speech organs is impaired. For example, your lips are impaired. Okay. So when you go out on the stage to deliver your dialogues, you will not be comfortable in speaking those letters, right? Because your lips are impaired. They have been injured due to some or the other reason. And the consequence is that whatever you speak has to be without using your lips, right? Because if they are impaired. So in a play, when there are instances when one of the speech organs is impaired, the dialogue delivery uh, imbibes that impairment, and you see dialogues which don't have those characters which require lips to be pronounced. So I'll give you an instance for this. Okay. And each letter has a unique attribute based on how long it is spoken, from where it is spoken, how much effort you put in, and where your tongue touches, or the extent of touch that happens when you move your tongue. So all this is when you undergo a speech therapy, all those things are told to people how to improve their pronunciations and all those things, right? And when you start learning Sanskritam in a traditional manner, this is the first lesson about pronunciation, and it is called as Shiksha. Okay, so Shiksha deals with mostly the pronunciations and the letters. So I'll move ahead. So the organization of Sanskrit letters are two ways. One is in Maheshwar Sutras that are quite famous. If you go into if you have studied Samskritam, you would know about Maheshwar Sutras, which is a classification based on your effort, how much you effort, from where do you. So, for example, if you speak something that comes from your stomach, the effort is from your stomach. Some letters are pronounced when you speak from your throat, right? Some letters where the aspiration is very high. For example, if I say ka, right? Ka is a letter, right? If I say ka, there is no aspiration. If I say kha, there is an aspiration. So this is the kind of effort that decides the kind of letter which exists in Sanskritam, right? And then there is a classification based on what is the source of origin. For example, when you speak, uh, if I say ka, the sound comes from my throat, right? If I say pa, the sound comes from my lips. You can try it on your own, right? When I'll show you the chart in a moment, you will recognize. When I say ta, your sound comes from your teeth. So these are the places which are used to pronounce different letters. So that is the classification. Now, this particular classification has become an integral part of all Indian languages. Sorry, of all Indian languages, right? Whether you read Marathi, whether you read Hindi, whether you read Bangla, whether you read Gujarati, Tamil, Telugu, Kannada, Malayalam, the organization of letters remains the same across all Bharatiya languages. Why is it so? Because they all they all derive that structure from Sanskritam, because it is very systematic. It tells you about the origin of a particular letter, right? And this is something that we have taken for granted, right? Like some of you who might have had the opportunity to study Indian languages, you must have just taken it for granted that, look, okay, this is the structure, this is there, and we are all happy about it. That's how it is. But when we compare it to English language, it doesn't have any structure, because you have A and then you have B. A and B are totally different letters in terms of from where they are pronounced, from where they originate, from how much effort is required. So they don't really follow a pattern. But our languages do, and that's what the beauty is of Sanskritam and all its daughter languages, right? So I'll tell you in a moment. I'll explain further what I was saying. So you look at this figure, right? So this is the structure of uh, the vocal cavity that you have. You have different organs. You have glottis, right? Then mostly in Sanskritam you have palate, right? Then you have lips, okay? And then you have alveolar region, right? And then you have your tongue. Now it depends basically how all of these organs are utilized in pronunciation. So just go on the right, and you would see that the guttural letters are a, k, kh, g, gh, g, right, and h. So all of them are clubbed together at one place. Then you have palatal letters, right, which are e, ch, ch, j, jh, n, and y, sh, right? Then you have retroflexes, which is just behind your palate. So you have to twist your tongue slightly to pronounce those letters, which are harsh letters, because you push your tongue backwards, and they are like t, th, d, dh, n, right? All of these letters are harsh. They are retroflexes, and they don't exist in many languages. So Indians have the capability to pronounce those letters, but you would see many speakers across the world, especially in Middle East, people are not able to pronounce those letters, right? So now that is something we are moving backwards in our mouth. So you have your palate, you had your cunt, means your glottis. Then you had your palate, which is just behind your teeth, and then just behind your palate is the place where you pronounce retroflex letters. Then you have dental letters, right? Dental letters are th, th, d, dh, n, s, and la, right? So these letters are pronounced from your near your teeth. And then you have labial letters, which are pronounced using your lips. So if your lips are impaired, basically these are the letters you will not be able to pronounce. That is oo, that's a vowel. P, f, b, bh, m. So all of these letters require your lips. And as I have told you before, uh, all of these require one particular organ to be pronounced. And then there are combination, right? So you have a palatoguttural, means you utilize your throat as well, your glottis as well as your palate. Then you have labioguttural, then you have labiodental, and then you have nasal letters. So this classification is nowhere, like in none of the other languages of the world, which is absolutely scientific, and and that's how it has to be organized, right? Now I move forward. Uh, a second. Okay. So now how is it applied, right? How it is applied? What is the sense of this? So now when two letters are to be pronounced together, okay, and you have a source that has been clearly defined. So you have a, that is a guttural letter. Then you have e, which is a palatal letter. So these both are being pronounced from different organ, right? Now when they come together, when they combine, you get another letter which is called as a, and a is palatoguttural, right? So it combines. The Sanskrit language actually has codified when these two letters would come together. It is not possible to pronounce them separately, so why not combine it? Use it a letter which has its origin from the place where both the letters are being pronounced, right? So this is something very beautiful. It is very advanced also. I'm just giving you an instance. Once you get into Sanskrit language, you would know. And what happens when you have a constant conjugation, consonant conjugation? So you see, I wrote nis, okay? Sa is a dental consonant. Then you have something called as charati. Charati has a palatal start. Cha has a palatal start. So you will have to make effort from transitioning from your dental region to your palatal region. So Sanskrit Bhasha says, don't worry about it. I will ask you to change the sa, the dental letter, to a palatal letter, which is a sha. So it will become nischarati. Okay. So you see, these changes are coming from the biological aspects, or like you start studying Sanskritam, uh, keeping in mind the phonetics. You don't study the language and then go back to phonetics as you do in other languages, right? So this is something that I feel is very fascinating if you look it from a scientific point of view. And that's why I wanted to put this up. Now, interesting example, in the 7th chapter of one of the text by Dandi. He was a famous poet in 6th century from Kanchipuram, Tamil Nadu. Okay. So he, due to some circumstance, I'll let you go back and read what are those circumstances. The lips of the protagonist are affected. Okay. So he cannot pronounce the following letters: pa, pa, ba, bha, ma, and u. So what does the poet do? Poet says, okay, I'll write a complete chapter without using these 5 or 6 letters. And that's what you see here. That's what I'll give you an instance. I'm not going to, like, it's in Devanagari script. I know most of you are not able to read that Devanagari script, but I will read a couple of sentences just to tell you that these letters have not been used at all. Okay. So a small section from there that I put here, note down for these 6 letters: pa, pa, ba, bha, ma, and u. So they are not there. Okay. So I'll read it. Raja Dhiraj Nandana Nagarandhra Gatasya te Gatim Gyasyan Naham Cha Gatah Kadachit Kalingan. So you see there is no pa, fa, ba, bha, ma, and neither there is u. Then again, Kalinga Nagarasya Natya San Sansthit Janada Hasthan Sanstaktasya Kaschit Kanda Radh Ranijasya Astirna Saras Kisala Yasan Sanstare Tale Nishadya Nidra Lead Drishtir Ashayishi. So no, none of these letters. So I'm not going to read it further because it's not making the meaning is not clear, but I just wanted to note you the sounds. There are none of those 6 sounds. And remember, this person has written a complete, it's like a huge chapter. And imagine that level of creativity of Indian poetics, right? So that is something to be noticed, and that is the wonder of this language. Now, I go to the second part and I ask you this question, and I'll request you to unmute and just say it loud. We'll not waste time on taking a poll. So how do we represent letters in Samskritam? Using Maheshwar Sutras, right? So suppose we wish to represent 15 letters, like a group of 15 letters. How many minimum letters do we need to represent those 15 letters? Just take a guess between these 4 numbers.
2.
2,
3.
okay. 3, 2, 3, okay. Okay, so I changed the question. How many it would take to represent letters in any other language apart from Sanskrit?
1.
1, really? How do you think so? 1. Why would it take 1 letter to represent 15 letters? I would be willing to be educated because that I didn't see in any other language.
You'd probably need 15 to represent 15.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, in other languages, you would need 15 letters because there's no such system to introduce all those things, right? So I'll tell you about Samskritam. Maybe if you know about some other language, you can hold another meet about the beauty of other language. Yeah, that is okay. So now I go ahead. Okay, so this is the illustration, right? I give you something called as Maheshwar Sutras, which I list below. So 4 Maheshwar Sutras are listed. So each one is one of the Maheshwar Sutras. Okay. So there are 3 letters followed by a consonant, 3 vowels, 2 vowels followed by a consonant, right? So in this arrangement, the last letter, the last consonant that you see is basically a tag. Okay. It's like a tag, like a red tag, blue tag, green tag, and all that. So now, if you remove those tags, you would see that there are 13 letters in this group. You can count it. I'll leave it to you. The screen is all up to you. You can count it. Okay, you can also take my words. That it's harmless, I tell you. So so when you ignore the last letters, uh, and what you do is you choose a letter that is in the beginning. So let's say we take a, and we take a tag as cha. Okay, so we choose a letter as a, and we choose a tag as cha. So if we write both of them together, what we call as ach, okay, we get two letters, ach. So using those two letters, when I write this, and all the letters which are in between, excluding the tags, get represented. So ach denotes these 13 letters, a, e, u, r, a, o, I, o, just by a single letter, I mean two letters, ach. If you want to exclude a, you can start with the next letter and say ich. So all the letters except a will be represented by ich. And that is very powerful, right? That is where somewhere you want to code, you want to tell someone that how many letters are here, things become really, really simplified. And it's not about just 13 letters, right? All the letters in Sanskrit Bhasha can be denoted by two letters, right? So this is the power, one of the very, and all of this expands to Sanskrit Vyakaran, the Chandas and all those things. Okay, so now the most difficult part is over. So now we will have an easy moment. Okay, so now I'll talk about something about sophisticated poetics, right? So then we have something called as meters, right? Meters are also very fascinating. They are like, when you write a poetry in Samskritam, it's almost like solving a puzzle. Okay, you have constraints, you have to fit those constraints, and only then you can get through. I think Samyukta is here. She attended one of my lectures, probably, I think, last summer, in which we discussed about chandas. So I'll not be in that much detail, but I'll just give you an illustration. Then you have something called as faults in poetry that you won't see in any other language. What are these faults in, like, of course, there could be grammatical errors that are definite faults in certain languages, but there are faults with regards to effects that would have it on the reader. So I'll go through that, then poetic ornamentation, and then we have rasa, emotions, and all those things, right? So I'll tell you what are meters. Like, being metrical is the necessity of poetics in Sanskritam. So there are about 130 recognized meters, and most poetic verse use about 20 meters, right? And they set the rhythm, tune, and emotion of a particular poem. So today I'm giving you an example from Bhagavad Gita. All the shlokas in Bhagavad Gita follow a set pattern, right? And that pattern is called as Anushtup Chanda, okay? And I'll show you how it works. So this is an example of Anushtup Chanda, and that is, it has the following rules, right? What are the rules for Anushtup meter? 4 quarters of 8 letters each. So you would have 8 fours are 32 letters, right? 5th letter has to be of short duration. 6th letter has to be of long duration in every quarter. And the 7th letter alternates between long and short. So I'm not asking you to understand this right away, but understand the fact that when these people were writing these texts, when our Munis were writing these texts, for the entire text of Mahabharatam, like 100,000 shlokas were written, keeping in mind these rules. So I'll tell you how it works. So I'll just take the first shloka of Bhagavad Gita, Dharma Kshetre Kurukshetre Samaveta Yuyutsavaha. So first shloka, first half, and look at this table, right? In this pattern, the 5th letter is short, 6th letter is long, 7th is long, right? So we had seen the rule. If we go back, the 5th letter will always be short, 6th letter has to be long, and the 7th letter alternates between long and short. So because the first one is long, the second one has to be short. and and this is one of the simplest meters, right? The meters get really uh, mm, because there are no rules on the first four letters and also on eighth letter, but most meters do have rules on all the letters, and they create a particular rhythm, right? When you remember Bhagavad Gita shlokas, it has an inherent rhythm, right? And that is because it has this chanda consideration in its place, right? So we can talk about it in detail sometime later, but I have to cover other parts as well. So I'll quickly move on. Then, what are the faults in poetry, right? So, of course, grammatical faults are inevitable. That you don't want any grammatical faults in Sanskrit language. That is quite obvious. But there is another fault which is called as Shruti Katutvam, or harsh pronunciation. So, for example, letters like t, th, d, dh, they create a sense of harshness. So poetics, expert poets say that don't use these letters while you are writing a poem, right? Sometimes the poem is difficult to comprehend. So the poets say, don't write something which is hard to comprehend, because it interferes in generating that emotion. If you are too much invested intellectually, then you would not appreciate the beauty of the poem. Then irrelevance means if you're out of the context, no matter how beautiful you have written, it doesn't matter, right? And then if you don't do sandhi, that means if you don't follow the pronunciation pattern, the speech biology, then also you incur a fault. So these are just some examples of what kind of faults poetics imagine while they deal with Samskritam, right? Now, the last part is ornamentations, right? Ornamentation, like alankaras, like you know about metaphors, similes, right? But in Sanskrit language, there are more than 120 such tools available. And these tools show different aspects of beauty, and people recognize that. And then you all know that there are 9 rasas which get manifested in different expression, which includes romance, laughter, karunya, fury, disgust, horror, valor, amazement, and tranquility, right? So this is the first part of my presentation, and I just want to conclude by introducing you the embedded etymological approach in Sanskrit language that I was talking about, that you can derive every word from scratch. And I'll use my name as an example for that, so that it's familiar, right? So most of the words in Sanskritam can be derived from the root, and the word has a root and a suffix. These are basic, and prefix is optional. Sometimes you have it, sometimes you don't. And the grammar rules help you to reach to the final form. So anyway, any questions here? I have not been able to look at the chat. I know I've been running like over time, and maybe I requested Sergey for a 45 minutes of talk. So I'll conclude that the latter part is not so demanding. So this part required some more time. So if you have any questions, I'm ready to take it. Otherwise, I'll finish it and then we'll come back to the discussion.
I think there was a question in the chat, Mahodaya, about Samyukta asked, are there any Sanskritam texts that don't use the entire Varga?
I think he answered that one with the thing. I asked it before, he answered it. So
yeah. There is another entire poetic work where they have not used this. I think I'll give you that name, Samyukta. I think one of them is Dashkumar Charitam. It is only an excerpt of that work, but there are also some texts which are completely, which have evaded the use of certain letters. So I'll quickly go to the next part, which I think is necessary, and once I do that, I'll just open up for discussion. I'll not take much time, like just 5 to 10 minutes. Okay. So then this part of my presentation talks about peek into the Bharatiya society, like the value system of Bharatiya society, and like what are the values that were actually manifested and identifying our ancestors with highest morals, like who were they. You could also see the intellect of poets and artists. And the last part is very critical, a culture that bound the entire Bharatvarsha, transcending the geographical separation, right? And that is very critical. That is very critical because no matter whether we are born in Tamil Nadu or Ayodhya or Bengal or Gujarat, we follow the same cultural roots. And that is very critical for us to recognize at every moment. It's just that we are differentiated by food and dress because of climatic reasons, but inherently we all celebrate the same festivals, we all celebrate the same deities, our gods are same, our value system is same. So that is important to recognize. Okay, so now a very critical aspect, right? Go Raksha, that is sometimes which is used against Hindus, especially in United States for jibes and a lot of things which are very derogatory. But I want to tell you that how much it mattered for a king. And I tell you an instance from Raghuvansha, that is a Mahakavya written by Kalidas. And this is an example of Raja Dilip. Who was Raja Dilip? Raja Dilip was ancestor of Bhagwan Ram. So the son of Raja Dilip was Raghu. And based on that, the entire entire Vansha is called Raghuvansha, right? And that's why Bhagwan Ram is also called Raghava, because he is uh, his ancestor is Raghu. Okay. So there is this shloka in the second chapter, right? I am not giving you the shloka because it was taking up the space, but I can give you the number. You can go ahead and look at it. It's in second sarga, 55th shloka is there. So there is a lion that captures the cow of Vashishta Muni, and you can learn about the context when you read it. So the king Dilipa was unable to fight that lion, right? So he had that whaler, but he was unable to fight that lion. So the lion said that I would eat that cow and she would die, and you go back. But Raja Dilip had given the promise to protect that cow, and he offered himself in exchange of that cow. And he said that it is better that to rescue Nandini by offering myself to you. This way your hunger will be satiated and the means of yagna of Vashishta Muni will be preserved. So the cow was not only a sacred figure by its existence, but all our rituals were heavily dependent on cow. Like there was no ritual which could be conducted in the absence of a cow, right? That was the way our Hindu society was. Now, it highlights two major points. The king's values cows more than their own body. And second, no dharmika initiatives were possible without the cow. So that's the place of cow in our culture. If we go back to literature, we'll recognize that. Okay. Now, then second part, the relationship of a father and daughter. We have Women's Day today, and often feminists and different leftist organizations demean us for practices like Kanyadanam and all those things. And they say that how we objectify women, which is not the case. In the Western system, the emotion of separation is considered most strong in a fallout of a romantic relationship, right? Lovers separate, and that is considered as the most painful thing ever. But in one of the greatest kavyas called Abhigyan Shakuntalam, the father, when he asks his daughter to go to the house of his lover, which was King Dushyanta, to become the princess of the entire region, this particular shloka is considered the best shloka in the entire Sanskrit Sahitya. And it is 4.6 in Abhigyan Shakuntalam, and I'll give you just the translation. It says, my heart is filled with grief because today my daughter Shakuntala is leaving to live with her lover. Tears have choked my throat and I cannot see properly due to excessive rumination, right? And I'm a hermit because Shakuntala was living in a forest with her father. And he says that despite I am the person who has given up so much, everything in this world. I feel so distressed. I feel so hurt. I cannot even think. I am the highest of the munis, and yet my emotion is choked. I cannot think at all. What would be the state of common people who are living in the cities? So he just says that for a hermit like me, I cannot bear this pain. Common people cannot, like, it is the most difficult phase for a father to ask his daughter to leave the house or leave the place to live with her lover or whatsoever. So, howsoever you may call it, there are matrilineal and patrilineal societies in India as well. So, that is where she lives is not an issue, but that emotional disconnect and priority changes for the daughter. So, that's what he is pointing here, right? So, you see that wonderful relationship has been portrayed in our literature. So apart from these particular issues, I'll say raising civilizational awareness is one of the key aspects of Sanatan Dharma. Like Bhartiya scholars provided the philosophical basis to mathematics. So, like we talk about Vedic mathematics, right? Vedic mathematics is not just about quick computation. Vedic mathematics deals about fundamental concepts of 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, how they exist, in what are their philosophical basis, right? Then our festivals, they are decided on the basis of very subtle astronomical movements, and we could predict solar eclipse, lunar eclipse, Purnima, Amavasya, even before the satellites were launched into the space. So our strength in doing these astronomical observations was way too high, and we should be proud of that, right? Even today we have panchangas that predict our different festivals. Our food systems, they involve complex mix of spices that are considered healthy. Now the Western world is trying to adopt turmeric and all those different things, but our texts like in Ayurveda talk about all these things that we have to consume it on regular basis. And our yogic practices are acknowledged all over the world and now being appropriated. So we have to fight that. We have to know Samskritam to tell that no, yoga is ours, it's not yours. It has to be spoken very clearly, right? Now, this is the second last, about the second last slide, and I'll conclude. Then we also recognize the frivolity of fault lines. Like the British imposed a divisive theory on Hindus that have created the fault lines. The first one is the racial theory, which has been disproven using DNA analysis recently, which has been published. But the linguistic theory, which is also a racial theory, which divides Hindus of India into Dravidians and Aryans, which is a totally frivolous idea. It doesn't exist, right? And this has given roots to linguistic chauvinism, which was fueled by some very naive decisions taken at the time of independence to divide states according to their languages, which has fueled this emotion. But all our languages have strong Sanskrit roots. So if you study Samskritam, you can study almost all Bharatiya languages. So that difference actually is gone for you. You can travel anywhere in India and do the basic communication if you know Samskritam. So that's how it binds the entire culture, right? And that underlying cultural homogeneity, outside we are very heterogeneous, but there is some common thread that binds us together, and that we recognize using Samskritam. And then we have to combat our vilification, right? We have to combat how our deities are vilified, how our goddesses like Durga, Lakshmi, they are portrayed in a very negative sense, how their relationship, the relationship of Krishna with gopis, they have been portrayed in a most degenerate manner, which is abusive to Hinduism, right? So how would you analyze it? So Sanskrit gives you the ability to go into those details and learn about them. Then you have something called as Brahman bashing, which is very prominent in the Western discourse, that Brahmins are shown as people who were slave masters, just in the analogy of the Western world, which was not the case. If you study Dharma Shastras, the punishment for Brahmins. Brahmins had a social capital, but they were not allowed to have any material prosperity, and the punishment for them was way higher than the rest of the people, right? So these issues should be understood when you have a proper command in Samskritam. And why I say this, I give you one example of two examples of translations where the translations have not been able to convey what the initial idea was, right? Translations are misleading. So the first part is inadequacy of translation. So in Abhigyan Shakuntalam itself, the son of Shakuntala is actually playing, okay, and the caretakers of Shakuntala's son are are giving him a mud bird, a bird made of mud, okay. So when they are giving it to him and his mother is away, so the ladies say Shakuntalavanyam Pasya. Okay, Shakuntalavanyam Pasya. Shakunt means a bird, Lavanyam means beauty, Pasya means see. So they are telling the child, look at the beauty of this bird, which is made up of mud, right? But the child responds, oh, where is my mother? Kutramam Mata, right? So why does that child say that? Because his mother's name is Shakuntala, right? Shakuntala is his mother's name, and he hears Shakuntala in that sentence. Shakuntala Vanyam Pashya. Okay, but when you read the translation, can you get that beauty that was intended by the poet to be portrayed? How will you translate it? It's not possible. So it's not possible. So if you translate it, the translation would say, the caretaker says, look at the beauty of this bird. And the child says, oh, where is my mother? Does it make sense? How does it? It doesn't, right? It's only when you read it in Sanskritam you will understand what it stands for. So this is one. And last sloka, last slide for my presentation. Sorry, I apologize for exceeding the time. I just wanted to take this opportunity to apprise you what is all going on. So this is the first sloka of Valmiki Ramayana. Okay. So I'll speak that. I'll do the charanam. Tapaswadhyaya niritam tapasvi vagvidam varam naradam paripapracha Valmiki munipungavam. So this shloka basically means, this is the first shloka of Valmiki Ramayana. The correct translation is, ascetic Valmiki inquired the Narada, which is preeminent among the sages. Pungavam means preeminent among the sages, ever engaged in the practice of religious austerities or study of the Vedas, and best among the eloquent. Right now, for a very long time, Robert Goldman's translation was used in all American universities, right? So look what he translates the word Pungavam. He says Valmiki, the ascetic, questioned the eloquent Narada, bull among sages, right? Because Pungava also means a bull, that is there, but Pungav also means the most preeminent, right? So bull among the sages, it's not the correct description, right? It's not even the correct sense of what the poet was saying. So that's how you see that the translations are either inadequate or incorrect, right? And the last part, how to combat vilification by knowing our cultural sources, understanding the language, understanding the values, and developing an independent outlook to our practices. So that's where I conclude, right? And if there is time for discussion, I'm open for that. But if I've run out of time, I apologize. Yeah.
No, Mother, you don't have to apologize. This was really good presentation, and I'm sure we're all okay with staying back for a few minutes. But before we go into discussion, Mahodaya, can you tell us a little bit about what can be done to, what is the first steps that people can take if they want to get into learning Sanskritam?
Yeah, so I'll just take off the slide sharing, right, and we can come back to this. Yeah, okay. I'll share it once we are in the discussion. Okay. So the first steps that we need to take is make up our mind that it has to be learned for the reasons I have told you, and there could be other reasons as well that you can look forward to. That is one part. The second part is be motivated about it, right? It's something that will enrich you, and also make up your mind that it needs some effort from your end, because some things which are very advanced also need a lot of practice. For example, music, right? Music needs practice. You have to play that instrument almost every day, otherwise you will lose touch with that, and you will find yourself in a difficult position to get it back on track. Because I used to play tabla back in India. I played it for 7 years. Now it's been 4 years since I have played. I find myself in a very difficult situation to play it back. So it's something that has to be done on priority, on regular basis, and with motivation. Of course, you need to, you know, just like any other languages, we can start with Vyakaranam, and there are plenty of resources available. The good thing today is in 2020, there are huge resources. Like there is no dearth of resources that are available to you to learn Sanskritam. So just be motivated and you will get along. Also, leverage your mother tongue. I'll tell it to all Hindus, right? If you are, I mean, even little bit of background in your mother tongue will help you get access to Sanskritam fairly easily than you would while using English. So, so yeah, that's what I want to say. Yeah.
Yeah, I think Sanita was asking for you to share some of your
Yeah,
thoughts.
I'll share that shloka with Sayukta. No worries. The second part is written by me. The first part was written by. It is a famous shloka. So, yeah, yeah. Any other questions you have? All right. Should I ask those questions that I have planned to discuss, or do we have time for that, or we need to just?
We can take a look at the questions and see.
So first question, do you agree with the notion that raised awareness about Sanskritam can help us combat Hindu phobia? Do you all agree? What's your take on this? I'm pretty open to this. Like I'm just open to this question where it leads us. Please feel free to.
I mean, personally, I think that the more in tune we are with our own culture, and being able to get the to understand the foundation of what Hinduism is, will help us to combat Hindu phobia, because I mean, Sanskritam is like the backbone of Dharma. So if we understand the language, we'll understand the culture, and we'll be, solid practitioners of Dharma as well. We'll become that along the way. So, which means that not only we're combating people talking about Hinduism in a negative way and being able to advocate and say what is the truth, but also show at the same time what's our appreciation for our culture, to show what the positive sides as well.
Absolutely, yeah, totally agreed. Yeah.
I would also like to talk to my fellow people in a language that isn't the language of the conqueror, because I don't speak Gujarati or anything, and then I'm Bengali, so I only speak Bengali. And my mom taught me some Hindi, but I grew up outside of India, so I don't know that much Hindi either. And I would love not to talk in English to all other Indians who don't speak Bengali.
Yeah, absolutely. I think if we have, what happens with Samskritam is that right now we see we need to put some effort in learning the scripts, because every state has a different script. But if we cross that bridge, right, every language in India becomes very accessible. In fact, like Hindi speakers, if they can read Bangla, they can understand almost every bit of it. And my experience is that being born in North India, I was able to grasp Kannada. I talked to some people, and uh, via Sanskrit. Sanskrit helped me to recognize all these languages as my own. So that's the emotion I have, that all our Bharatiya languages are my own. It's not about the region which I belong to, and that's the sentiment that we all should have.
I wanted to expand on what I don't know who the first person that spoke was saying, but or the name of the first person, sorry. But I think kind of like when you were talking about the mistranslation of that the shloka, so we see that present in so many forms, like the fact that these a lot of our texts have been translated in the past by Europeans or the Western academia, and they have their own sort of biases that they put out there. So when you're reading through it, like for most for most people who don't really know Samskritam, so if you're Indian and you're like trying to understand this text, you're looking at these translations, and this is like your source of the information. Whereas, like if you were able to truly just understand it from actually reading the Samskritam, there's so much more depth of information and so much more understanding that you can gain from doing that versus reading these translations that are obviously like have so many implicit biases in them. So it's really important for us to learn Samskritam and that like specifically to combat that Hindu phobia and to have that sort of like sense of identity and being able to like proudly say like, no, I know this text, I can tell you what it means, which is not present in a lot of people. I mean, I know so many people who are like, if you ask them anything about Hinduism, they'll just say like, oh, I mean, my parents follow it, and so I kind of just know that's it. That's about it. I don't really know anything. I can't tell you anything. So like a lot of this sort of like the sense of identity that I'm Hindu, I know what I'm talking about, like that comes from understanding Samskritam and understanding what Dharma actually is.
Absolutely, very well put. I mean, that's the best way to, perhaps one of the best way to put it together. That our most of our texts have been translated by Europeans, and that's where we are. The entire like most of the universities are running South Asian studies based on those translations, and they are telling us about what we should know about our
Listen,
own system. Yeah, go ahead, please.
let's
Yeah.
like just adding to that. Also, like there are also preachers who like Zakir Naik who say wrong things, like who twists things.
Yeah. So absolutely, I think if I'm able to put that across, that how important Sanskritam is for our existence, for our own well-being, in the sense that our own um, to enrich our lives, basically. That's where it stands, and that's why it totally deserves the effort that we should make, and we must be committed to make. Okay, Nesargi, can we take the last question? What can we do to promote Samskritam apart from what Samskrita Bharti is doing? We are all up there to, like, for example, I just want to tell you, if you are looking for a fresher course in Samskritam, Sanskrit Bharti Yuvagana, especially, of which I am a part of, Nesargi is also a part of, we are there to help you. We are there to teach you Samskritam, to get you started, to give you the resources and talk about beautiful things. Many of, like I know some people like Samyukta who participated in Yuvagana Varga, and people appreciated that, and that was a pilot basis, but we will do this year again, and all of you are welcome to join. We'll try to coordinate your preferences with regard to time, right? Yeah.
So somebody's asking, what is the name of the course?
Yeah, so it will be tailored for Yuvagana. So keep in touch with Naisargi. That's I'll request you. So I mean I would want to tailor that course for youth. Who I want you to have exposure to the different aspects of uh, like Sanskrit literature. For example, uh, this this would not be just a speaking course, but we'll expose you to Ayurveda, we'll expose you to Jyotisha, we'll expose you to Vedic mathematics, we'll expose you to literature, we'll expose you to poetics, vyakaranam, all those things. So it's not going to be just a simple course. So we'll do that. So we'll reach out to you. Probably we'll do that in May or so when the semester ends and you have your summer semester. So most of you would be interning or doing something, but that I feel that is the most appropriate time to get that course. Right? Yeah.
Yeah, and you guys can just look for announcements in the HSC Satsang chat, and we'll also be putting, maybe we can put announcements other places on social media for this, if you guys want to join. And also to answer your last question, Mohode, so how can we promote Sanskritam? It's just to, learn Sanskritam yourself first, right? Just
exactly.
You don't have to exactly worry about everybody doing it at once. You learn it yourself, and then you can, even if not anybody, at least your upcoming generations will learn it from you. So yeah, thank you for this really, really intriguing and thorough presentation. Mohode does a really good job of just giving you a taste of something and then just leaving you hanging, so you have to go look for more. So, that's what the goal is, to just go out and seek what Mohode was saying and learn more about what he was introducing to us. Yeah, thank you for taking your time. And I'm sure if you guys have any questions or want to look at some poetry, if you can read Devanagari, Mohode has a really good collection of things that he has created himself. So maybe you can reach out to him to learn more about that.
Yes, I'll post out my contact number here. So you are free to reach me on WhatsApp or whatever, and yeah, my email ID as well. So you are free to reach me, and I'm all there to provide you resources for learning Samskritam, and also in terms of cultural studies, in terms of Dharma Shastras that I like to talk about. So if you have dilemmas, I would be very happy to address all of them, right? So if you have any questions, I'm willing to take. Otherwise, Nesargi, thank you for giving me this opportunity, and Arnav and the entire Hindu Student Council team. If you want a more focused presentation, just reach out to me, and I'll talk about a specific topic, like for example, Ayurveda for that matter, right? For Yoga Shastras. So I can give you 1 hour discussion on those lines. Not that I'm an expert in this, but yeah, so yeah, that's what it is.
What I just linked right now in the chat is an interest form for people who are interested in upcoming collaboration between HSC and Samskritam Bharti for Sanskrit workshops. Yeah. So yeah, it's just in the chat. Please fill it out if you can, to show if you'd be willing to join that. And Harshad Mohode has also posted his contact as well.
Yeah, I just sent it to you, Nesargi. I have to change the recipe and share to everyone. Yeah, just a second. Okay, so I just did that. I think. Yeah.
All right. With that, Mohode, thank you for joining us, and thank you all for joining the discussion. And next week, we're going to be having a discussion based on a little clip that we're going to watch together and then discuss something related to Hindu phobia. So please tune in for that. And yeah, that is all. Thank you, and Shubhratri.
Shubhratri, everyone. Thank you.
Namaste, dhanyavadaha.